PLD PJ Campbell. Two mediocre white dudes on film. Because frankly, we know you don't have enough of that in your life. So we're here to give you more. And without further ado, here are two mediocre white dudes on film.
I'm really glad that we're actually here and not, screwed up recording an episode only to find you were not recording an episode, Paul.
I was recording the episode, PJ. That was not the issue. The issue was I looked down so that my mic was not on at all, meaning that it had been unplugged, which meant that you were getting the shittier version of myself, and we don't want the shittier version of myself.
Version of you.
Wow.
Yeah, I said.
I got two words to say to you about that and this movie. Venice.
Yeah, it's a good line. It's weird. I was thinking about this while we were prepping for the movie, and I was like, it's the summer of 1989. A young Paul Denuzzo is waiting to see Michael Keaton as Batman and Harrison Ford on the big screen as Indiana Jones. And then I was like, it's the summer of 2023. And Paul Denuzzo and PJ Campbell are waiting to watch Michael Keaton on the big screen as Batman and Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones. What a weird way that we're coming wildly full circle with this movie in particular.
Yeah, I'm absolutely on board with that. I didn't really think about that until you just said that, but you're absolutely right. I can't wait for both of them, and I feel like I am that old again. I feel like I'm that old, waiting for this movie to come, waiting to go to the theaters for this movie. Give me a big old bucket of popcorn and a big old, Pepsi free now, or Pepsi free. Pepsi, that's bad.
I'm just going with the Mountain Dew.
You do that. I got a little
the Baja Fresh specifically, no sugar.
Ooh, I love the Baja Fresh. Oh, Baja Fresh,
I'm telling you. Yeah,
I didn't know that. I didn't know about that. Oh,
dude, there's hard seltzer Baja Fresh now.
Oh my goodness. That's a world changer.
It was a couple of weeks ago. I was at the grocery store with my lady friend, and we were hanging out, and we were getting food, and I was going to make breakfast in the morning, and we were walking around the store grabbing things, and we both looked over, and there were honestly, dude, it was like looking at the Ark of the Covenant. There's this fucking box of hard Mountain Dew that are sugar-free.
Wow.
That had Baja Blast in it.
You sure? You sure it was the Ark of the Covenant?
Yeah.
Pretty sure. Top
men told me, Paul.
Top men.
So yeah.
Really quickly, all I got out of that comment was lady friend. As far as all I started thinking, you're the dude now. You're my special lady friend, dude.
She is my special lady friend, man. My girlfriend and I were going shopping for food, and so we went to go grab things, and sure as hell there it was, and I was like, well,
there you go.
Yes, I'm buying that, and we drank the entire case that night.
I don't know. There's something about Baja.
Dude, they had a hard Baja cherry flavor in there too. It was so good.
Oh God, that sounds
heavenly.
And
it was zero sugar, man.
I love that. I love that.
God. I know. I take my I take that stuff more seriously these days for obvious reason. We've talked about it. So when I find things like that, it's the closest I'll ever get to heaven. I just rewatched The Rocketeer. I don't know if it's obvious.
It's always obvious. I can kind of feel it on your aura whenever even through a screen. I can go, yep, PJ's watched The Rocketeer recently. He just feels better.
Yeah. There's something about that movie, man. That James Horner score. Wow, it is so weird that we're in a summer that we're getting Indiana Jones and Batman again, but with the same actors 30 plus years later.
Right?
I mean, I know we've talked about it, but it's just odd in the best way.
You know what? Yeah, I gotta say, there's some people who have called out against nostalgia. Obviously, Hollywood doesn't have any ideas yet. Whatever. I don't care. I like the idea that I get to see Michael Keaton as Batman again in my life. I don't even care if the movie sucks. Michael Keaton is Batman.
I just want to see Keaton back in the bat suit.
That's happy. It makes me happy. It makes me smile.
It makes me happy, dude. They played the trailer again, and I saw Across the Spider-Verse the other night, and the trailer came on and I like fist bumped. I got all excited and like jumped out of my chair because I was just like, it's fucking Keaton, dude. He's back in the bat suit. The want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. It just hit me right. And like I fist bumped. And Megan's like, are you all right? And I was like, I forgot you have not been with me when these things happen. I get very excited. Like, this is who I am.
I gotta tell you, my kids are the same way. My kids and my wife and I went to see Cross Spider-Verse as well. And the Indy trailer came up. And every time the Indy trailer comes up, I go, yes, every time.
Yeah, dude, every time.
And they always look at me, they roll their eyes a little bit like, here it goes. Here's his dad again. Here's the old man. He's losing it.
So I was at the bar on Sunday before going to the movie, and I have a couple of regulars that I hang out with on Sundays after I get off, and we kind of hang out, and we're sitting there talking, and one of them, he's a gentleman I like very much. He's an older guy, and he's like, wait, Keaton's back as Batman? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, wait, and Ford is back as Indiana Jones? I don't believe you. And so I had to show him the trailers while we were sitting there. And it was the same thing. Like just watching the Indy trailer, man, like it just makes me happy. And, you know, I know there's a lot of people who don't love the use of sympathy for the devil, but like it's such a perfect time placement marker for when the movie takes place.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then like the way it gets mixed into the Indy theme by the time it's over, like the hope you guess my name thing when it shows Indy's face and then it's like the pull off of the de-aged Indy is so good.
So perfect. So well done.
It's so good, dude. Like that's a fucking good trailer.
Yeah, it is a really, really good trailer. And the use of the music. I'm a sucker for a slow down with theme. I'm not gonna lie, especially an older
Me too. Nostalgia. Kind of it's the nostalgia pool. It was what Ghostbusters did for Afterlife.
What Rise of Skywalker did for Star Wars at that point, that last final big draw. What a great moment that whole trailer was for me. I get worked up. The last time we're going to see Harrison Ford, probably. I mean, never say never, even though he said
no. I think this is it.
I think it is too. I've just come to think of like I'd never say never because I thought King and Crystal Skull.
All right, Sean Connery, calm down over there.
Never say never again. But you're right. This is probably the last time we see him in there. And I don't care. Like you can tell me the movie sucks. I don't even care. Like just give me Harrison Ford in a fedora with the whip, with the music behind him. I'm gonna have a good time, and that's where it is. And if I'm a shill, if I'm whatever, fine, call me that. I'm gonna enjoy myself. You go do whatever you want to do.
I assume that people are still not prepared for the fact that you and I are gonna go so hard for Crystal Skull next week. Like, even though I've said in every episode, I'm like we both legitimately love that movie.
Yeah.
And people are not ready for us to, and here's the thing. Anyone who has talked to me about it, who has been like on the other side of that argument, has always walked away and been like, fuck, you're right. So, I'm prepared to change minds next week.
I hope we do.
Mold people's minds, if you will. This is why I wanted to be a teacher once upon a time. I wanted to mold people's minds, man, make them better.
There you go. And better means like enjoying life for what it is and enjoying what you get. And
you're damn fucking right.
Yeah, absolutely, my friend.
That's the whole thing, right? Like, we talk about it, and I'm very open about like my mental health and things like that on social media. I treat that very seriously because I didn't treat it very seriously, and it caused me to have a lot of problems and issues for never addressing all of it. So now I'm very open about my mental health struggles and like the way that things are. And part of that is also embracing life for what life is. And I think that we get so caught up in what we want life to be versus enjoying life as it is. And I'm not saying life has to be perfect. Far from it. We don't need life to be perfect. Wow, we're getting so like waxing poetic this morning. But like, it's important to embrace and enjoy, and it's the simple things, man. That's what I mean. Like just stuff like this, seeing cool movies with people that you care about is a cool thing.
Yeah, 100%, man. I can't deny that. I don't think anybody should. Enjoy what you enjoy. You're only here. You're on this ball. You're spinning around that ball once in your life. You have one life to live. Watch what you want to watch. Enjoy what you want to enjoy. Get the most out of your life. And that's whatever that is to you. Like if you want to sit home all day and watch movies, and that's what you get the most fun of, then you fucking do that. You want to go scale Mount Everest? You go do that. You go.
Yeah, I'm actually going
that
backpacking soon. Look at me. Like, I'm getting out in nature and shit. It's going to be great. I haven't done that in so long.
Good for you.
Yeah.
I'm actually taking a trip. I'm not a vacation person. I'm not. I'm
know you're
more
not.
of a staycation person.
Which is why you're taking a vacation to Arizona to stay in my house in October.
That's true. That's true. But that funny thing is, my wife did that. My wife did that.
I'm aware.
She's the one who put it out. I mean, I love it. I love the idea of coming too. I'm actually going to Mexico with my wife and some of her friends in January.
They're allowing you to
February.
leave the country.
I know. It's amazing. I don't know if you can let me back in. I don't know. That's what I have. That's my concern. But yeah, but something I just don't like to do, generally speaking. But I'm gonna put it out there and see what happens. And we'll see what happens. But
I'm really proud of you. That's outside of your box. That's outside of your comfort zone. Look at you.
It definitely is.
Yeah, look at you being all adventurous.
I think
it's almost like watching these Indiana Jones movies. Yeah, I was gonna say, it really wore off on you, man. We spend way too much time together for us to have the same joke ready to go.
Imagine if we lived together. We actually would even be even worse because we text a lot. We hang out every once a week or so. Hang out this way doing stuff. We text a lot. But imagine if we were together as much as we could be. Holy shit, it would be scary.
Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau right there. Little odd couple, grumpy old men.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I'm definitely.
I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely.
You have the grumpy old man thing down. I'm still.
You're working on it. You're working on it. Let's be honest.
No, but I'm young. I'm still young, and I'm trying not to be grumpy.
You're
trying really hard not to be grumpy. I want to be. I had someone tell me yesterday that I'm one of the most optimistic people that they know. So I need to keep that going for at least a little bit before I go off the deep end.
You can be optimistic but be grumpy. There's a difference. There's not necessarily a thing. Because I can be optimistic about a lot of things. I can still be grumpy, crotchety. But
all right, Clint Eastwood, calm the fuck down. All right, that's all I'm saying. So we're going to be talking about one of the all-time great sequels today, which I'm really excited about. But there's another all-time great sequel now that I also want to talk about real quick before we jump into anything, and that's Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, well, tomato.
No, I knew you were going there, and I'm happy.
I knew you were, but we've been doing this a lot. I feel like we almost use this show where we talk about older movies to also talk about newer movies, and we just jam it in so that we can have the conversation about the things that we've been watching, which I love, by the way. But we hijack at least a portion of the podcast about Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade to talk about Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
Absolutely. I love that. I'm all here for it. You took a long time to see it this time, so I've been waiting.
Look, I've been busy. All right.
I understand. I don't blame you. I'm just stating the facts.
I know.
We usually watch these things close at the same time. We were talking about it. We had to wait. I had to wait for a little bit, and finally we're here. You hit it, and actually it benefited.
So mad at me.
It benefited you though. You got to hear the better version with the better audio.
Yeah, apparently there was a new sound mix. I knew nothing about any of this.
Yeah, I got to tell you, the first one I only saw it the one time, so I probably will try to go back to see it. Well, I don't know if I'll be able to. I don't get out as much as I used to be able to do. But I am a grumpy old man, and it's streaming in July, so I might not see it until July. But the audio mix from the
it's not released until August.
Did you that's right. Yeah. It was updated until August. That's right. That's fine. My bad. Don't spread me this information. I remember getting the article that was July, and then there was the correction that it was going to be August. But either way, the beginning of the film was very muddy, and I could barely hear Gwen's dialogue at all. I was I was struggling to hear it, and I know I'm an old man, but it was just the music and stuff was just so loud. I kind of got what was going on because I understood that I was watching, so I could kind of figure it all out, and I knew what was being said for the most part. But the actual dialogue, I couldn't hear, and my son said the same thing. He was having a hard time hearing it. The rest of the film wasn't bad. Some people had worse off than I did, I think. But that first part was practically inaudible. I mean, it was reminding me of Christopher Nolan in Tenet, basically that kind of sound. I could not hear dialogue at all for the first
that is wild to me that someone put that out there. That do you remember when they did? Was it The Dark Knight Rises prologue with Mission Impossible 4?
Yes. Yes.
Was it Mission Impossible 4?
That's right around that time, so that makes sense.
Yeah, so right around that time, whatever movie that The Dark Knight Rises prologue was attached to in IMAX, if you went to see it.
I think it was.
And I remember the same thing happening, where you could not understand literally anything that was being said because the sound mix was just so terrible at that point.
And just overwhelming background noise and stuff. And
Yeah.
the music was
So eventually the movie came out and it was better, but Nolan is notorious for the same thing, like bad sound mixes on a lot of his movies. And it just kind of keeps happening.
which is
And
so
now
weird to me.
there's actually been articles about this recently, and it's actually why I watch things with subtitles all the time on when I'm home, because the way that things are sound mixed, like the dialogue is always so low comparative to everything else, and it really messes with you. Like you miss things without realizing.
I agree. I hate it. I
Yeah,
hate it. I also watch things with subtitles on. Some people don't get that. I'm like, well, because I want to know what's being said, because I think it's important to
right.
know what's being said. Unfortunately, watching with subtitles can sometimes spoil you sometimes, because sometimes the dialogue will come on the screen a little early, or it'll say like who's saying the dialogue that you don't like
Yeah.
before it's actually revealed. That's happened a few times, unfortunately. But yeah, I try, especially for second viewings. If nothing else, I definitely put the subtitles on at that point.
Yeah. So I'm gonna say there's gonna be a little bit of kind of spoilerish talk as far as Spider-Verse is concerned.
Yep.
I would say if you have not seen Spider-Verse, I would skip ahead about 10 minutes because I think that'll be about the hot minute of us talking about this enough where I want to be able to talk about it without not being able to talk about it. I want to talk about some things in it that I thought were really cool and really interesting. So this is your warning. I would jump ahead to the 30-minute mark at this point. So I'm going to give you a little bit of time to get there.
Okay.
And give or take, you can jump around. Who knows? We may finish talking about it before we get to that part. But the point is, I just don't want to spoil people who have not watched the movie.
Right.
But I want to talk about the goddamn movie. So that's what we're going to do. And first thing off the bat, I just want to say I love the way that this movie incorporates all the different versions of these characters that we have come to know and love over time. And it doesn't. I'm not talking about just the live action versions. It's so great that they have Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire in the movie.
Yes.
It's so great. It's incredible. So number one, yes, they are in the movie, not in a way you're anticipating, but they are both in the movie, and it gave me chills when they popped in. But to have characters like Spectacular Spider-Man, to bring in other characters from the comics that you're not maybe used to seeing, like the Spider-Punk character, to bring in the Spider-Mobile, like these different versions of the characters was very interesting to me. But also, I appreciated that every version of them continued to keep their own style, and also to have J. Jonah be voiced by J.K. Simmons in every universe is such a masterstroke of storytelling, because he is just at the point of being the only actor that seems like totally synonymous with the character that they don't think that he can be recast.
That makes sense. I said that way back in the day during the Raimi film. Back, I think he was alongside Ian McKellen as Gandalf. He was probably the greatest casting of a fictional character that had previous material, like books or comic book wise, that I had ever seen. I think he was just so spot on perfect that I'm glad they didn't try to recast him with anyone else. Sure, someone else could do a good job, but they still wouldn't be J.K. Simmons' version.
Right. And, in the back of my head, I think Bryan Cranston was always the actor I thought that could have been a very good J. Jonah, but now he's retiring from acting. So.
Well, is it? I think is he actually retiring from acting? I heard
he said that in 2026 will be the last year that he acts.
There was an update, and he said that's not. He was taking a year off at that point.
He's taking a year off. I missed the update. I only saw the initial report that he was retiring.
He's like, no,
thank goodness. I don't want to not have Bryan Cranston around because I
agreed.
Love
Perfect.
Bryan Cranston. The fact that Lord and Miller found a way to do another Lego movie thing within it also is so perfect. The fact that we see a Lego Spider-Man universe because the Lego Spider-Man sets exist is arguably one of my favorite moments in the movie.
Did you hear about that Lego thing? What's about the background of that? Oh God! That sequence was animated by a 14-year-old kid, because a 14-year-old kid was on YouTube and he created a Lego version of the Into the Spider-Verse trailer, I believe, on YouTube. They saw it and they got in touch with him, and he actually they got him, this 14-year-old kid, 14 kid, to animate the Lego portion of the
Are you
Spider-Verse stuff.
serious?
I am dead serious. I read a big article about it. My son found it for me, because he's an animator himself. They just got in touch. They talk like the parents were a little like, well, really? Because I thought it was a scam at first, but Lord Miller talked to him. They actually he would go to school, do his stuff, come home, he'd work. They'd have like a meetings every couple of weeks, and like they would give him direction on things and how to do it. He did it. He's on Twitter. I forget what it is. He actually kind of announced it on Twitter. I guess I can announce this now or whatever kind of thing. And yes, it was a 14-year-old kid who, because they saw him on YouTube do it. They said, we're going to put this in the movie. We're going to have him do it in the movie as well.
That is the coolest story, and it's
right?
so wholesome, and it makes me so happy.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, what the hell? I love Lord and Miller.
Huh?
Once again, if I'm Lucasfilm, I'm kicking myself for letting them go, because Across the Spider-Verse, man, like, these dudes know how to make movies, and they wrote this one. They didn't direct it, but like, man, they just get storytelling, and like
Absolutely.
to do little things like that. It just goes to show how willing to like work within different parameters and finding new ways to tell parts of the story, and that's so cool to me.
Yeah, I agree too. And like, actually, this is a very good description. We talked about the Solo thing a little bit off the air, and like, we both are fans of what we got with Solo, but we both agree it was definitely the safe version of the movie.
Yeah.
And they panicked. I think people like Lucasfilm panicked at Lord Miller taking things outside the box. But this kind of proves that you could have a Lord Miller sense of humor, but still have very high dramatic stakes.
Yeah.
And that beating emotional heart at its core, which would have served well. Would have served well for Han Solo as well. We could have had a trilogy of Han Solo like this, I think, in a way, and his coming to age stuff. And it could have fit in very, very well. It is what it is. Unfortunately, it didn't work. I'm glad that we got Spider-Man, Lord Miller on Spider-Man, and at least for the 3 movies we're going to get from them on Spider-Man, because they do know what it is. They have, yes, they're funny. Yes, they have their own wicked, weird sense of humor. There's a lot of strange things in there. There's the fucking like the Venom thing. There's like all sorts of weird things that they decide to do.
The Venom thing was fucking. That was the one moment where I was like, man, we really just tied Venom into this too, and I was not anticipating that at all. And again, to have little live action bits to that point, Donald Glover as Prowler, what a great cameo.
Yeah, that was spot on, cameo. I was not expecting that one at all.
I wasn't either, man. It threw me. Like, when he sees it, it's not polite to stare. It was so perfect. And I was like, oh my God, man. Like, that was so good.
Yeah, 100%. 100%, man.
It tells me that they also have plans to use Prowler, which makes me happy.
Yeah,
like,
I think so.
The bigger universe, I think, will be using him as Prowler again, because he's been set up since Homecoming.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we would hope that eventually we have some kind of payoff, and I don't see them not using it as long as Glover has the time in the schedule to actually do it. Then he's a busy guy. So
but I want to say, I think Across the Spider-Verse is up there with the all-time great sequels, though. I mean, it is up there with Empire. It is up there with Wrath of Khan. It's up there with Back to the Future 2, like
Last Crusade.
Last Crusade. Like, but it's specifically those kind of middle chapters, Godfather 2, like the ones that you don't really realize just how stake heavy everything is going to feel, and it's over, and you feel like you've almost transcended by the time it's done.
Right.
That's how I felt when it ended. And like, I had this just emotional thrill when To Be Continued popped up on the screen in a way that I did not anticipate.
Yeah, same here. I honestly forgot. I legitimately forgot this was a sequel, that there was a part 2 coming. I really was. I don't know why I forgot. I knew it for the longest time. Hell, it was
because you were so locked into the movie, probably.
But I was so locked in the movie. All of a sudden, I was kind of like, okay, where's this going? Okay, we're gonna have here we are. We're gonna get the big final battle. Oh, we're not getting the big final battle. This is just basically almost this whole thing has been a prologue to the final battle. It's coming up in part 2 now at this point, to a degree. I was like so locked in. So once I did like get that glimpse about a minute and a half before it happened, like, oh, this is only a part 1. Oh shit. Oh wow. Oh my God. Okay.
Dude, the realization that he's been sent to the wrong Earth, and he like finally he tells his mom that he's Spider-Man, and she goes, "You're who?" And that like the way the music turns and you start to realize what's happened, and then you see Aaron walk into the house, and you're like, "What the fuck?"
Oh, fuck.
Oh my god, my heart dropped because
Mine
I
too.
wasn't anticipating.
Mine too.
Yeah, and
Insane.
again, it was very Back to the Future too, like,
Yeah.
because Miles going into a house that is his house, and things look the same, but
Yeah.
not quite right, but he
Yeah.
doesn't really notice it until, he's outside.
Yep. It's
A
so
world
cool.
without Spider-Man.
Oh god, what an
Also,
serious storyline.
way to take the bagel joke from the first movie and make it actually, like, a thing that the villain is holding against him. Are you kidding me?
That's
Dude,
so
Jason
funny.
Schwartzman's great in this, by the way.
Oh, he's phenomenal. He's phenomenal. And what an idea of having him be the main bad guy. Like, I mean, the Spot. Like, the funny thing is that we saw the Spot in the trailer,
He's an
and
awful
like,
character in the comics too, like,
he's an awful
he's
character in the
so
comics. We see him in the trailer. He legitimately like, okay, so this is what they're showing us in the trailer. They're going to show us the fake, like, funny first villain that he does. Like, he's going to get rid of him the first, like, 10 minutes of the movie before he go on to the rest of the story. That's all this was, right?
yeah.
Oh, wait, he's actually the main bad guy of the film. Oh, and he's actually kind of badass and actually kind of dark and dangerous. Oh, I can't believe you made that out of the fucking Spot of all the. I mean, like, it's amazing to me how they are able to make that work. And that's what I was talking about. You have a sense of humor. The character like that can legitimately be a badass bad guy.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
One with, like, real emotional depth, and you actually
Right.
get it.
Right.
I just dude, everything about it, and, like, the Spider-Man 2099 stuff was really, really cool.
Mhm.
It's really fun seeing Miguel in a movie. I thought Oscar Isaac was such a great choice for the character.
Oh, always.
Always. Stoked that it looks like Noir will be back in the third one, which
Yeah.
makes me happy because I was missing Noir. But I mean, I think the point was too is that when Miles gets there and none of the people really that he knew outside of Gwen are there, and then
Yeah.
Peter, and to have that, like, him feeling lost, he's missing his friends because I mean, even his parents say he doesn't have friends and he wants to see the people he knows,
Right.
and so the fact that they're the ones who are all going to rescue him just seems so cool, and I think this idea that there's going to be a team of spider people trying to save Miles from a team of spider people who are trying to kill him is just it's so good.
I love it. I love it. I think that was my only. If I had anything negative to say about the film, and it's not even a very negative thing, I do wish we got a little bit more from Peter B. Parker. I kind of liked them as a trio last time, him,
Yeah.
Gwen, and Peter B. And Peter B. was definitely kind of sidelined a little bit in this one, a little bit, just a smidge. I'm hoping that he gets a little bit more to do in three. Again, that's a very big nitpick because overall, I think it's one of the greatest sequels I've seen as well. So.
Yeah, and good lord, the animation. Like, the
Ah,
fact that they had so many different animation groups able to work together to make it.
mhm.
And I wanna say this right now, it is not lost on me that Captain Stacy is very clearly modeled after Paul Newman. I texted you after, and I had lost my mind because I had just picked up Cool Hand Luke on 4K, and
Right.
so I had, like, a very fresh image of that version of Paul Newman in my mind, and I was sitting there, and I was like, "Holy fuck." I leaned over to Megan, and I was like, they put Paul Newman in the movie. And she's like, what? And I was like, look at Stacy. And she was like, you fucking nerd. Yeah, I know. I was just
But
so
it's
like,
funny because to me, like, I didn't think about that because I haven't watched Cool Hand Luke in forever. I don't have it, like, so I didn't have that in my mind. In my mind, I kept saying, "God, it reminds me so much of Mr. Incredible."
yeah,
Which you then informed me that Mr. Incredible was kind of based a little bit on Paul Newman potentially as well. Like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Okay, we're so
yeah.
close. Away.
But like, and then I sent you that picture from Cool Hand Luke, and it's like very obvious down
Yeah,
to the like bright blue eyes.
yeah, very much so.
They straight up just put Paul Newman basically
In
in
the
a
movie.
movie because he can't be in superhero movies. So they were like, well, what if we made him into a superhero movie? So,
Yeah, I mean, they
that,
obviously did it as a choice because obviously they had other Captain Stacy's they could have worked from or based it on. Obviously, could have based it
funny.
on Dennis Leary. They could have based it, you know what I mean? But they didn't.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So, you know what? I'm really glad that I told them to come to the 30-minute mark because here we are with like 10 seconds remaining and we're just kind of wrapping up the talk
yeah,
about Across the
good time.
Spider-Verse.
Good time. Good time.
It's almost like I know us too
You
well.
do. You do. Here it is, 30 minutes in,
All
5
right, welcome
seconds.
back to anyone who thought that we might still be talking about Across the Spider-Verse. I just informed Paul if you've skipped ahead. I'm glad that I told you to wait. to the 30-minute mark because I know us too well. I knew we were going to talk longer than 10 minutes. But we're done talking all of our Cross the Spider-Verse goodness, and you know, we can talk about it farther in the future and really have fun with it. But I'm glad that we got to put our initial
thoughts out
reaction
there.
and
Yeah.
thoughts out there. Please watch Cool Hand Luke and then watch the movie. That's all I'm going to say.
So shall we go ahead with what we're really here for?
Yeah, I guess.
Venice. Venice.
Venice. So if I'm remembering correctly, it's time to get in that way back refrigerator, and we're gonna drop the nuke, and we're gonna go back to the summer of 1989, my friend. Again, it was a rip-roaring summer of Bat people on screen, directed by Tim Burton, and you know, there was a Bond movie out this year. Like 1989 is a crazy summer, actually. If you like go back and look, there's some good stuff. I want to say Lethal Weapon 2 is that year as well. Like you get some really, because I think if I'm remembering correctly, we did talk about that when it came to Lethal Weapon being one of the biggest movies of that year. 89 is a wild
Mermaid,
summer.
Dead Poet Society.
Yeah.
All sorts of good stuff. But yeah, even when Harry Met Sally.
Yeah, which a fantastic movie.
Absolutely.
But here we are.
Lethal Weapon 2 is exactly there. Absolutely. And you know what else? Ghostbusters 2.
Ghostbusters 2. I want to say probably Lost Boys.
That's Future 2, Parenthood. And you know what? One more I got to mention on brand. One more I have to mention on brand. Then move forward. The Abyss with Ed Harris.
Of course you did. This fucker.
And Major League, my favorite comedy of all time, Major League. But all right, go ahead.
Anyway. That's not how you say Tommy Boy, but that's fine. Anyway, so Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade is touted this summer before with the all-time greatest teaser trailer ever. In my mind, a teaser trailer that I show to people when I talk about how I want marketing to go back to being very clever. That original teaser trailer for Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade is an all-time announcement trailer where it's showing them on set filming the movie and they're all having fun. And it's interesting because I showed it to Megan and she was like, it's actually edited very modern. Like there's a lot of quick cuts and things that you're not used to seeing from stuff like that back then. Right. And she's not wrong. Like it's a very interesting trailer, but I love it. It's so fun. And it's announced that the movie is coming out, but it's also announced that it is going to be the last one. I mean, the title kind of at the time gives it away.
Kind of, yeah.
You know, of course, here we are waiting for the second sequel to this in 2023. But
so just how things go, but that's okay.
They need a break at the time. Things go. And they've decided to go out on a high note. The film is going to be the rip-roaring adventure that you're used to. It's going to be much closer in tone to Raiders. Like they waited 4 years between sequels at this point or 5 years rather, to find a story that they were all comfortable with. They didn't want to go back down the rabbit hole of Temple of Doom. The reactions were not what they were anticipating. And so it took them a little bit to recalibrate. They got there, and that includes, we need to add one more Jones to the proceedings.
Yeah.
And as we've talked about in the past, one of the things about the Indiana Jones franchise that is very cool is that it spawned from the fact that Spielberg always wanted to make a James Bond film because he loved James Bond movies. Eon didn't hire him in the beginning because they didn't know who he was. By the time they knew who he was, they could not afford him. So Spielberg never got to make a Bond movie. Yeah. However, he could get Sean Connery to be in one of the Indiana Jones movies, and he could play with the James Bond character. And so that is what they did. Sean Connery joins the cast as Henry Jones Sr., the father of our esteemed hero. And boy, what a fantastic pairing.
Oh my God. Well, as James Bond is the father of Indiana Jones, James Bond is the father of Indiana Jones in this movie as well. And you're right. This is a great chemistry, despite the fact that Connery is not that much older than Ford.
He's 13 really years, I think.
13 years. That's but overall, I mean, you couldn't get any better than that. And I was actually surprised because watching a lot of Connery's roles, he usually plays very much the assertive Bond type, very not necessarily aggressive, but very cocky, very sure of himself. He plays Dr. Henry Jones Sr. With much more reserve, knowing that it's kind of got to be Indy's movie. He gets to play this little bit of a different kind of character than he usually gets to play, and I love him for it. He's got a little bit of a humor to him, a little bit of twinkle in his eye that he doesn't always have. But him and Harrison just work so well together that despite the age difference, I completely believe this is father and son on screen.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because as far as like making this movie was concerned, Spielberg was like not really about it. He ended up turning down other projects along the way that he wasn't thrilled about. He was supposed to make Big,
Yep.
which he ended up giving to Penny Marshall, Rain Man, which ended up going to Barry Levinson. Like they were supposed to do that. And this movie also had so many drafts that are so different. And I've talked about some of them on here. One of them was, of course, the one that was written by Chris Columbus,
Yep.
which was the initial opening in a haunted Scottish castle. And then eventually it ends up being like this African adventure where the Monkey King is in it and Indy rides a rhino across the plains. Like, it's a wild script. I have it somewhere. I'll see if I can find it. But
man, if that movie had been made and like it's that Crystal Skull kind of thing, oh my God, it's like the same type of thing, right? They would have lost their mind. People would have lost their mind over it.
Dude, I tell you that all the time too, you know? Like, I think people don't understand, like, they would never have been happy no matter what had happened.
I agree.
Like, there was a Nazi general or villain who has like a mechanical arm in it, which I thought would have been really cool though, like a steampunk style arm. They had all sorts of very interesting characters. There was a pirate leader who was supposed to be kind of like Toshiro Mifune, which I would have loved.
Yeah, let's see that.
I mean, Toshiro Mifune was an all-time actor, and his characters are always very memorable. Like, if you've seen Seven Samurai or Yojimbo, like, you always remember him. Like, he's a great actor. Oh, yeah. So this movie goes through many, many drafts before they end up on a movie that is a slapstick high-adventure film that is very Raiders of the Lost Ark. But it's not... I think people compare it to Raiders a lot, because it's got the like Christian symbolism artifacts of it, and he's fighting Nazis, but they're not as similar, I think, as people want them to be.
I don't disagree with you. I feel like they're both very, very different movies. Yeah, very different Indiana Joneses, to be completely honest with you. But I think the difference is that this was more in line with a Temple of Doom was disappointing to some people out there. Definitely more of like it went off into a darker territory. This is definitely a little more lighthearted. Not that Indiana Jones is ever completely lighthearted. You get the burning of the Ark and the Lost Ark at the end of Raiders, and you get some interesting moments during this one that are not quite like, I wouldn't say they're lighthearted necessarily, but it's not quite the same as like people getting their hearts ripped out and things of that nature, and not as mean. It feels like it's not mean spirited. This feels like a Harrison Ford Indiana Jones who's much more a little lighthearted, even if they're still different films.
Oh yeah, and I don't. There are certainly similarities. There's a chase through the desert, but here's the thing that happens in a lot of Indiana. Like, Indiana Jones has certain beats and certain iconography that you're just never going to quite escape.
Right.
And that doesn't make the thing the same. It just means that you have similar pieces, but you're playing with them differently. Right. Like that. And that's how I kind of look at this movie comparative to Raiders. Now, the other thing is that I love that this film has Indy. He has the Elsa character who's with him for a little bit, but for the most part, when it comes to the film, he spends most of the time with his father, and it's such a different dynamic because you're used to him having like the indie girl, if you will, as the side character. But in this one, that is not the case. They really leaned on the short round aspect of having a partner in crime who could equal Indy's.
Right.
But to have it as his dad, and his dad being kind of disapproving of the stuff that he's done, it makes for such a interesting dynamic throughout the movie that's why this movie is so good.
The best part about it, honestly, is the fact that you get to see Indy humbled. in a way.
Yeah.
Like there's times when they're like, he's like, yes, sir. Yes, sir. And he's like, yeah, yes, sir, his father. And like, that's not Indiana Jones. He's always the cocky adventurer who knows what he's doing. And he's making stuff as he goes along. He knows what he's doing. With his father, he's kind of kowtowed a little bit.
Yeah. Dad, we're well out of range. And then Mortar goes off right next to him. Like a perfect example of his father being the smartest one in the room at times.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. The time when like, and when Connery uses the umbrella with the birds.
Yeah, with the birds.
He does the quote afterwards. It's a great scene. I applaud Spielberg for doing it. He walks away and it lingers on Indiana Jones, who just looking after his father. There's like sense of, wow, like this guy's really good. This guy's really smart. This guy knows what he's doing in a way like that. You don't get out of Harrison Ford, Indiana Jones very much.
Well, the interesting thing about that too is that callback within the film itself is really interesting because when the film opens, it opens in 1912, and you realize that we're in a flashback in Utah, and there's a character named Fedora who Indy encounters when he's trying to find the Cross of Coronado, and that's the same look that Fedora gives Indy when he gets out of the magic box.
Right.
And it's a really nice bookend to that, actually, of Indy outsmarts Fedora to a point, right?
Right.
Which also leads to an all-time. This movie's got a bunch of great transitions. It's one of the best edited movies of all of Spielberg's movies ever.
Yeah.
But the you lost today, kid. It doesn't mean you have to like it. And so he takes the fedora and he puts it on Indy's head and like
he bows his head
down, and the camera pulls back and it's Ford on the boat. Dude,
such a good transition. It's so perfect.
It's perfect. And we'll get into the River Phoenix and the first adventure thing in a bit. But like, this movie is full of stuff like that. Yeah. And the fact that the Fedora character has that like very meaningful like gaze of this kid's gonna do things.
Right.
And so for so long, then you see that Indy was always trying to get his father's attention, only for him to finally realize, wait, man, my dad actually does know what he's talking about. Like, that's such a good, strong moment. And I like that it weirdly comes full circle like that within the film.
Yeah, I agree. I agree too. And I love the character, like Fedora. That's what the subtitles say. I love him as a character.
And you know who that is, right? He's the head of the camp in Crystal Lake in Friday the 13th part.
Oh, 5. Yeah. I do that.
Yeah, which always makes me happy because he's not done a lot, but it's always funny because we're also doing the Friday the 13th film soon. So it was just kind of funny. I always forget that that's him. And so every time I see him, I'm like, oh yeah. And I get all excited because I'm like, it's Fedora and Friday the 13th. And oh yeah, we're going to be talking about Friday the 13th soon. Plug.
Like that. I love the character because like he could have been such like the whole beginning. He could have been just such a nameless, noteless villain. He's not even a villain. He's like this like guy. What Indy could have been if he had gone slightly different route.
Fortune and Glory
style. Exactly. He was hired by a villain. The other guy with I don't remember his name, but the Cuban guy. I think he's supposed to be a Cuban guy with the white hat and white.
The one who's dressed a little bit like Ford in Temple of Doom.
Yeah, a little bit. Absolutely. There's a little bit. I think that's why these movies compare it a lot. There is some like kind of visual callbacks. I mean, hell, Walter Donovan even is kind of a character that in some ways reminds me of Belloc as far as like a less hands-on version of Belloc in a way. Similar type of thing though. He's the guy who works with the Nazis even though he doesn't care about the Nazis things kind of thing.
It was Paul Maxwell and he just plays the man with the Panama hat. He actually doesn't
Panama hat, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. The man with the Panama hat.
I had to look it up. I couldn't remember.
But Fedora is like that. But going back to Fedora is like he's a great character because of that. Because you kind of can't help but like him because he doesn't want anything bad to happen. And he kind of like is almost like just amused by his antics. Like he's gonna get the Cross of Coronado back, but at the end he's like, yeah, you know, he sees the spark and he's like, you're gonna be a good kid, you're gonna be a good guy one of these days, and you're gonna really make it in this world.
Yeah, you know, I'll say this. The thing I really appreciate too. Overall about the opening of the film in particular, I love number one, you know, we talked a lot about John Williams' score last week. His score for this movie is equally as excellent. Indy's First Adventure might be one of my favorite pieces of music he's ever done. I think
Mhm.
it's so fun. It's so thrilling. It's very colorful, and it gives you all sorts of like fun feelings
Yeah.
while
Yeah.
you're watching it, and it just kind of works.
I agree.
Just very good music.
I also want to point out my favorite part of the score. Also, well, one of my favorite parts of the score is the Knight's theme. Or
Oh
the
yeah,
anytime they
night
start talking about
themes.
the Grail and stuff, or whatever it is, it's always that Knight's theme coming in. It's like so works so well. Yeah, so
Yeah,
powerful.
but it's also playful.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
The first adventure theme, which is
Yep.
why I like it so much, because it's young indie, and River Phoenix is phenomenal.
Yeah.
He doesn't get a lot to do, and like he gets a lot to do, I should say, in a short amount of time,
Right.
and yet he's so memorable, and Ford picked him specifically to
Hmm.
play him in this, and it's such a bummer that things transpired with River Phoenix the way that they did, because the
What
young indie
talent, man.
TV show was right there and like poised for him to be in it, and unfortunate that things went the way that it did, man. Like,
Was he? I don't remember the history actually. Though, was he going to like? Was there ever talk about that,
that
or
was
did
the
he
idea,
die?
was that,
Okay.
yeah, Lucas had basically kind of started working on it with the idea that he wanted River Phoenix to
Gotcha.
be in it. And of course that didn't happen. And Sean Patrick Flannery is great. There's no
Right.
denying it. I love him in
Oh,
those,
yeah.
but like it is a bit of a bummer. No, it's a big bummer. Not a bit of a bummer. It's a big bummer, because River Phoenix was very talented, and he did a lot in his short career. We could talk about Stand By Me. You could talk about what is it, Mosquito Coast, like all the different things that he had done. Uh, My Own Private Idaho. He's just very talented.
Oh,
He's a
absolutely.
great actor, and the impact he leaves in this movie in 10 minutes is, it should not be shortchanged.
Yeah, absolutely. He. I mean, to step into the footsteps of the character like Indiana Jones. Granted, not quite as legacy at this point as he is like much later on. He's definitely a like, iconic character already. Um, it's just amazing that he does it so easily. You know, he
Effortlessly,
just
yeah.
effortlessly, and like you don't ever question it. You're like, "Yep, this is exactly Indiana Jones." Like he has these like great line deliveries. Everybody's lost but me. It's
Yeah.
just it's just so perfectly indie, and it's like, wow, what a great moment to have him in there. And he's forever immortalized that way, and it's a good way for him to be
Well,
immortalized.
there's that moment too when they first find Fedora and his men, and they have the Cross of Coronado, and his buddy from the troop guide is with him, and he's like panicking, and he grabs the tie and pulls him forward, and he's just like, "Just listen to me." It's very Temple of Doom indie,
Yeah, yeah, you're right, you're right.
like dealing with Kate Capshaw, and like just the pull forward. Hey, listen to me. Like it's done so well.
Yeah, it is.
Uh,
So many little slapstick moments, so that's what's funny about it too, because he handles them very, very well.
Well, I
Um,
mean, the whole sequence on the train is full of like very great moments.
well,
Holy smokes!
you know what? Let's throw it out there. I mean, like this whole movie, this feels to me, and I could be wrong, but like, kind of feel like this whole thing was set up as like kind of a palate cleanser from some of the darker stuff of Temple of Doom. This is like a reminder of who Indy is, and this is like like not the first version of it, but I feel like this is one of the best examples of fan service. This is all a lot of fan service in here that I think if this stuff happened in a movie today, they'd be crucified for doing fan service like this. We're discovering how he got the whip, or how he got down to the whip, how he got the scar on his chin, how he got the fedora, how he got his fear of snakes. All of this is thrown at you in like a 10-minute beginning sequence. And
Yeah,
yet we love it because I think it's done so well. And those like this is who Indiana Jones is. This is good for a third movie kind of thing. Gets you going to that character. I love this kind of fan service, and
I do too.
I feel like it's if it was done today, it'd be unfortunately maligned, and I feel like that's something
I,
for today's audience got to work themselves out on.
and it's funny because I think that this is 100% the stuff that Lucas is really good at, that
Yeah,
people are hard on him about. But like, I love that Lucas has these ideas of fully fledging a character in
yeah,
some capacity. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
he has this thought about, how can I go back to Indy's past,
Right,
and how can
and
I do something with that
And
and
how
make
can
it
I inform
interesting.
on the future? Like, how can I make that
Yeah.
inform out of the story in the future kind of thing? It
Yeah,
makes
because
sense
he
to me.
doesn't do it just to do it. Like,
No.
because the end of the sequence ends with Indy with the Cross of Coronado trying to get his father's attention,
Right.
and his father writing him off basically because he's busy with the Grail work. So you're
Absolutely.
sitting there and you're like, they just need to communicate, and so it informs the rest of the film. It's not just there just to do it.
Right.
And even if it was though, it still kind of works. And then to have the transition be that the Cross of Coronado continues to be like that film's opening, if you
Right.
will, in the way that it all plays through, it's great.
100%. It's a great, what a great way to start off, like fast. Start the movie off fast and furious. No easing in here. We go right into a little bit of adventure, and but it serves as what a great way to use a fast adventure piece to deal with your exposition. In this
Yeah.
exposition, we get to know all about who Indy is. We get to know about the relationship with his father in a very quick amount of
Yep.
time, and that sets up everything to where Harrison Ford is at the beginning of his film, of his portion of the film.
It's really interesting too, because honestly, like the young Indy in this feels more like the Indy that we know by the time Last Crusade starts, which is a little weird just because like Temple of Doom Indy feels
Right.
more like he's gone off the rails a little bit,
Yeah.
because he's more in it for the fortune and glory.
A little bit. Right.
Yeah. So that is, I think that's also why Temple of Doom continues to stick out a little bit, to be
Just
honest.
a smidge. Yeah. You
Just
bet.
a smidge. And I don't mean that in like a disparaging way. I just mean like I think that plays a part in why it stands out, because even if you look at the Young Indie TV show and like the movies that they've become in the years since as they've been re-edited together, Indy as a character is more in line throughout all of those. Temple of Doom is the one where he weirdly stands out. And it's so funny because, here I was last week being like, at the same time, that's kind of the peak version of that character.
Mm.
And yet, the argument could also be made that maybe actually the Last Crusade one is, which is, I know, a side that you land on.
It is. It is absolutely silent on. To me, this is Indy at his best and at his brightest. I feel like Temple of Doom, he was dark. He wasn't quite to the Indiana Jones we needed. Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark kind of felt like we didn't know him well enough. We weren't familiar enough with him. I mean, even as Indy fans going back now and rewatching it, we get it. But it kind of still feels a little bit like Harrison Ford finding his way a little bit, which is the same of a lot of first movies.
Well,
You
and
don't
it
know who
should
the
be, though,
character is.
right? Because it's the
Absolutely.
first movie. Like,
Exactly. There's a reason why you have the development up to where you get to. Where you get to Last Crusade, he's very comfortable in his fedora and whip at this point. He
yeah.
knows what the character means to him, to the director, to the fans, to the stories he's telling. And so when he gets there, he's like, all right, I can kind of know who this is. And that's why there's a lot. And again, I think there's another reason why it gets compared to Raiders a lot, is it kind of like almost just a little soft reboot of it to a degree. Like we get Professor Jones again. We get to see
Which
Indiana
is
Jones.
a great moment, by the way.
Right. I love him doing his teaching and having his interaction with the students. And I love the fact that he escapes
He
his
sneaks out the window.
out the window. That's very Indiana Jones. Absolutely.
That look on his face is one of my all-time favorite Harrison Ford moments, when he's like walking through and he's trying to get through the crowd and all of them are there. And there's that one girl who's like leaned up and just staring at him. Yeah. And she's got the crazy eyes. And he finally gets inside his office and he sits down and like his shoulders just slouch. And he does this like deep breath eye roll thing. And then you just see the window pop open and he hops out. It's again, what a perfect edit.
100%. 100%.
This movie is ridiculously well put together.
Yeah, on so many levels. And that's why I think this movie gets him better than any other movie gets him to a degree. That's why to me this is peak. Temple of Doom is a great adventure story. Dark.
I still think the character of Indy in it, like the way he's designed, is the way that like is the peak version of the character.
Okay.
I don't know if that means fully the characterization, but I do think it's the way that we see the character.
Visually speaking, absolutely 100%. Visually speaking, 100%,
that to me makes the most sense because
Get
whereas Last Crusades, what's interesting about Last Crusade is I actually think he's a lot of the times he's the least Indy. at
Interesting.
times in
Interesting.
of like the look, because he changes it
Look-wise, yes.
like very frequently in a good way.
Yeah.
And I like that because it kind of breaks the character a little bit in interesting ways where you're seeing him in similar-ish clothes but doing different things. Like, I like that a lot. It actually adds a little bit to the way we know the character, because Temple of Doom is indie for 2 hours.
Right. You know, it's interesting you say that now, and I'm just thinking about this now that I didn't think about this before until this conversation. I wonder if part of that beginning sequence when we have that great transition is so that we do get to get a glimpse of Indiana Jones as Indiana Jones, because for the first big portion of the movie, he stays in Professor Jones'
Yeah.
costume for a long, long time. Even when he goes to
Like,
kind of
always
study
all
the
through
thing.
Venice.
Well, the rest, he's not in his Indiana Jones getup. He's in this Professor Jones getup.
Yeah.
So visually speaking, you're absolutely right. So
Isn't that interesting?
it is a very interesting. I think I might have inserted that in the beginning just to go. Here's a reminder. This is who this guy is, because you're not going to see
Yeah.
him for a little bit. To a
Also,
degree.
dude, that transition when his head goes back up and it's the rain and it's this boat sequence, which, by the way, very interesting also, that then the movie opens with like a big water sequence, considering Temple of Doom ends with a big water sequence. I hadn't really thought about that until last night. I was like, huh, what an interesting choice. Anyway, so I love the smirk.
Yeah.
Like, you get that Harrison Ford indie smirk immediately, and then he gets punched in the face. It's fantastic. Like, they just know how to build off of the character,
Right.
and it puts you in the mind of the character, and you're put back into that place where you're like, man, I love this guy.
Yeah, me too, man. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we go back to Professor Jones and we get reintroduced to Marcus Brody again. And I want to talk about Marcus Brody because
I was going to say, we're going to have to talk about the Marcus Brody of it all.
and here's what I have to say about it. I thought about this one a lot, because Marcus Brody is probably one of the criticisms of the film at this point is the slapsticking up and the dumbing down of Marcus Brody, so to speak. And to that, I have to say, I think that's more about what we talked about before, about what we expect from a situation than what we are going to get, because we didn't have a lot with Marcus Brody in the first film. Like, he is kind of someone who talks a big game. We never saw him in the field. We know characters like this who talk a big game, but when they get out to the field, they're actually not quite the men they come off as. So
Yeah.
I kind of like, at first, I understand the criticism, but at the same time, I'm kind of like, you know what? We didn't really know who Marcus Brody was. It's Last Crusade where we figure out who Marcus Brody actually was to a degree.
Yeah, it's interesting because Marcus does not get much to do in Raiders, and everything is just at the university for the most part. So to see him out, it gives me Benji and Mission Impossible vibes.
Yes, that's a great point.
Yeah, because when Benji finally gets out on the field, he's nervous. He doesn't really know how to handle. He's not sure if he should be doing any of this.
Right.
That's kind of the vibe I get from Marcus, and it's like him getting involved in the situation in a way where they shouldn't. And there's another great transition, by the way, when they realize that when they're trying to find Marcus.
My favorite transition, I think.
Yeah, and Indy has this monologue, and he's like, he knows 20 languages, and he'll blend in faster than you'll ever.
With any luck, he's got the Grail already.
Yeah, by any luck, he's got the Grail already, and it cuts to Marcus in Egypt asking,
"Everybody speak English?"
Yeah, it is so good, and I love Marcus in this movie, man. Like, I thought D. Home Elliott was having the time of his life, and this is one of his final performances.
It is.
Like, he dies not very long after this movie comes out.
Yeah, you're not
But
wrong. Denholm.
Man, he's so good.
So fun.
And he's so fun.
He adds that needed little bit of humor. You kind of need that little slapstick at that point, because to a degree. Go ahead.
I was going to say, you're right, because this movie is very, we've been talking about it. It's very comedic. Slapstick is a thing that you can apply to this movie, but it's done in the right way. And every time with him, it's done in a way that actually helps the character grow to the point that by the time you get to the end, he's very sure of himself.
100%.
And that's the thing I like the most, is that by the time the movie is over, he actually feels like he's come into his own in a way that you may not have thought he would.
Yeah, the time of his life, and that's okay. And that's
Keeping Up with the Joneses.
Keeping up with the Joneses. There you go. Nice
What
one.
a tagline. That have the time of your life, keeping up with the Joneses. That is the tagline for this movie, by the way.
I know, that's funny. Follow me, Indy. I know the way to go.
Lost in his own museum, huh?
Yep.
Yep. I love this character. I love the work that they do with him. And it's like, even Sala in this one, I wouldn't even say he's more comedic, but he definitely gets a little bit more levity.
Yeah.
Like when he first finds Marcus is one of my favorites. The run. Have you seen today's paper? Run.
Yes, right here. Run. Are you saying yes? Run.
I really, really like John Rhys Davies in this. Bringing Sala back is a nice choice as well.
I agree,
and maybe that's why people liken it to Raiders, but I don't necessarily think that's fair either, because again, in the vein of like all the Indiana or the James Bond movies, how many times does he interact with characters that you've seen before in some capacity?
Right.
Like the James Bond's entire world is full of people who have been around him forever, and so you see those characters frequently, whether it's Moneypenny, whether it's Q, whether it's people who are in the field, like is it Valentine, the one that Robbie Coltrane plays in the Pierce Brosnan ones? I want to say it's Valentine. I mean, then there's his American buddy Felix Leiter. Like they're in a bunch of the movies.
I think the difference is that Bond has had a plethora of amount of movies, whereas this is the third one, where the third one had the first one was Raiders, and the second one went a totally different direction, where the only people in the movie that were the same was pretty much Indiana Jones. I think was there anybody else in that film that was the same at all? I don't think there was anybody else in Temple of Doom that was the same, because it's all completely different. So it's all Indiana Jones.
It's also a prequel.
That's true. That's true too. Even though I think he was probably he might not.
He would probably know Marcus.
I was saying I don't know if he worked for the museum or not at that point. I don't really know where he was at that point, to be completely honest with you. But yeah, no, but I think that's the difference. And by the time the third one comes, like, oh, if we had a series of the other trilogy, say in the 90s, like we would have met these characters a bunch more times, and then Temple of Doom probably would have stuck out as the abnormal one to a degree, which it, in fact actually kind of was. To a degree. I also do love the Sala returning as well, though, and Sala has less to do in this one than he does in the first one. I think that's another reason why people might think of him more as those, because he's definitely more humor, because he had humor in Raiders of the Lost Ark. There were definitely bad dates or very dangerous. You go first.
Yeah. How about him singing after Marion kisses?
That's right, the Pirates of Penzance. Absolutely. But he in Last Crusade, it's kind of boiled down to more that's more of what he does. He does because he has less to do overall, and the times he does get to do stuff, it's more the humor side of things. But he still has his adventurous.
I said no camels.
Man, my brother's lost Rolls Royce.
What, man?
Indy's father.
Yeah. I love too that we're talking about the humor a lot. One of the things that makes this movie as rewatchable and as charming as it is that it is so humorous, and it makes you feel so good.
Yeah.
But on the same side of that coin, this movie is like very serious and very dramatic, and the weight of the father-son dynamic in the middle, and what it means to like grow up and trying to find favor in the eyes of someone who you think has been ignoring you. There's so much happening. And this like idea of the Grail Knights and stuff like is all very serious.
And yeah, there's personal stakes and there's also world stakes. I mean, that by the sake alone of choosing the Grail as the MacGuffin, I mean, because Raiders of the Lost Ark, general populace doesn't know what the Ark was until that movie. Like if you just said Ark, like Ark of the Covenant, what is is that like Noah's Ark? I don't know. But Last Crusade, you have the Holy Grail. Everyone knows what the Holy Grail is.
Yeah. Thank you, Monty Python.
Thank you, Monty Python. Exactly. But that's like a big zeitgeist thing. So you have those big stakes. You talk about supernatural. You have the Crusades. And that's the funny thing, too, is like sometimes, again, I'm going to bring it up. Like sometimes they talk about Crystal Skull, things of that nature, how it's going too far to supernatural. Indiana Jones has always been about the supernatural aspect of it. You have fucking immortal knights that lasts like thousands of years old, immortality potentially. It's
Yeah.
always been there. So it's just how sometimes you gotta accept it more than I don't know. I digress. I don't want to get
No,
too
I
much
mean,
into
I
it,
agree with
but
you. I think people I'm gonna say the thing, and we're gonna talk about it like real at length in the next episode.
yeah.
But I think that there is a tinge in there's a group of people that have rose tinted glasses for all things,
Hmm.
and so they see things very specifically in this idealistic version of this is how the thing is that I care about, and it should never move away from this thing. But in doing that, they fail to realize that they're trapping a thing in a box and they're not allowing it to grow.
Hmm.
And then you watch things like Crystal Skull, and it's not nearly as different as people think it is.
No, that's not.
And yet, for some reason, because they've put the thing in the box,
I think it
they
is.
have assumed that it is.
Yeah.
And so now they do not accept it. And I
Right.
think that that is the failure of current geek culture and fandoms as a whole. And
Agreed.
I'm not saying that in like the regard that I don't want to see new people in roles or anything either, because I've been a big proponent of recasting Indiana Jones. I have said it many times on the internet that I'm totally cool if you recast him in the future. You know why? Because more people than Harrison Ford have played him to this date.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. 100%.
Right. I mean, like Sean Patrick Flannery honestly has played the role of Indiana Jones more times than Harrison Ford did his entire career.
That's mind blowing to think about it, but it's absolutely true. It's
It's
absolutely
absolutely
true.
true.
Hmm.
And, we have plenty of people in our circle that we know who are vehemently against me every time I say this. But the truth of the matter is that this character will outlive Harrison Ford. This character will likely outlive all of us. And you know what that means? That character needs to be reinvented. And the same people are totally cool when James Bond is recast. So it's very weird to me.
I, I, it's funny you mentioned that because, like, I got to be honest with you, I'm kind of in between those people you're talking about and you. I struggle with trying to recast Harrison Ford. I kind of like give me the Adventures of Short Round as a substitute instead. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with Indy being retired to a degree, but I get that eventually he probably will come back in some way. And I think it's something that people are going to have to get used to. I think they will get used to it. And if it ever does happen, I'll be first in line for an Indiana Jones movie or TV series starring somebody else's Indiana Jones because I love the character, I love the themes, and I love the adventure. Yeah, I'll struggle with it. I'll struggle with it first. I'm not gonna lie.
And
I'll
it's
always very
totally
much
fair to
struggle.
struggle with it. I'm not saying that you even have to like it.
Right, and I don't know if I would, but I would give it a shot. I'd be open minded with it, and I love the character more than I love Harrison Ford. As much as that's what I was weird to say, 'cause I love Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford is my favorite actor of all time, and Indiana Jones would never be where it was today without him.
I don't disagree with that. And yet at the same time,
Right,
there's a reason that all these characters are what they are.
right,
And it's the Star Wars problem that we've talked about.
yeah,
And I've talked about this at length with you in the past is that Lucasfilm kind of shot themselves in the foot very early on with what they were doing now. And part of that includes all this CGI deep fake um de-aging type of thing when they could recast,
hmm,
but they don't want to because the truth of the matter is that since the 90s, since the books that of Star Wars that exist, every book that you picked up, every toy that you bought, every video game that you played, every animated version of a thing, every audio version of a thing, they sounded like the actors or they were the actors and the actors' appearances were on every
right,
comic, every book, everything you bought.
right.
And
That's
because of that, you trap people into thinking that they can only be played by those actors.
right. Whereas Bond and Doctor Who have done it very well otherwise. They've
Right.
actually trained their audience to accept that as
Accept
part of the story.
change.
Yeah, I mean, Doctor Who does as part of the story, which is a brilliant stroke in and of itself. But James Bond completely does the same thing. They just have to make the transition a good transition, like a solid, like this ends here. This is the new
Yeah.
version of it going forward. And it's a nice way to be able to reset it to a degree. I kind of the difference between Star Wars and Bond, and is potentially is the canon of it all, and now it's one Star Wars has really been one continuous story,
Oh no,
whereas
totally.
James Bond has been more episodic. Obviously, that's why you can get away with it easier. Indiana Jones, though, should actually honestly fit into more of the James Bond side of
Correct.
things because it is more of an episodic kind of thing. You could have Indiana Jones adventures that aren't completely. I mean, I'm sure canon part of it. Yeah, you might mention something. Like you might mention he has a father. He had a father that was with the Holy Grail. Marcus was there, kind of thing. It's there, but it's not quite as important as the overall storyline that Star Wars has kind of built up over the course of the years.
Right, exactly. So it's just something to think about in like talking about all of this, right?
Mm.
And again, this really, I guess, applies more to the Crystal Skull of it all. So the fact that we're having the conversation now is kind of funny because I feel like it's going to come back around.
I feel like we've been talking about Crystal Skull since Raiders of the Lost Ark. I mean, keep
It,
bringing
it's
it up.
almost, yeah, because we both
We're,
passionately like the movie.
we're warming up to. And the funny thing is, I'm gonna spoiler now for Crystal Skull for me. It's still my least favorite of the four, and yet I will passionately defend it. Like if I watch any movie, I'm probably gonna watch one of the other three. I still love Crystal Skull though, so I think it's because we know it's coming. We know that the pushback is coming. That we're like warming up to it. We're like,
Yeah,
just let you know.
yeah, there's a lot of greasing the wheels already to be like, we're just sliding straight into home base with this. You know,
We're running through the third base coach's stop sign. We're going right through.
don't keep going. Sorry, it can't stop now. The train's already rolling. Like you and I see it. I see the end. Like I see
It was
the
like
end of
me
it.
in Little League back in like the day when I was 12 years old. I hit like a triple or double down the line or something like that. I ran through. There was an error. I ran through. My coach was like, pull on stop. And I actually literally at 12 years old said, screw you, I'm going home.
Did you make it?
Right by. No, I didn't.
Oh, you tried.
I did. I was going anyway. I was taking the effort. I was making the effort. I made my whole team laugh and smile though. So
That's the most important part.
exactly, it was a good time. So
Yeah.
there.
Wow, look at you.
Oh,
Was that in the summer of 1989 as well?
It might have been. It actually might have been. It was around that time. It was definitely around
I was gonna
that
say,
time.
so that sounds like you'd been watching a couple of movies and you decided that you were gonna be the hero of your own story.
That's right.
Right. So, let's bring this back. One of the things I really love about this movie too, we've been talking about all sorts of great things about this movie. The action set pieces in this movie are fantastic, and they might be the best in the franchise, which is saying something. Although the minecart chase is really hard to top.
Yeah.
But boy, that tank chase through the desert is one of the best sequences that Spielberg has ever committed to celluloid.
Oh,
And then
100%.
the boat chase through Venice.
I was about to bring the boat chase up quite a bit. And even getting there before getting to the boat chase was this great fun piece. They did a lot of like very indie stuff. And this is where the Temple of Doom kind of did come in a little bit. A lot of more of the booby trap type stuff, a little more of the underground caverns and secret passageways and whatnot. And I love the whole finding the temple. I mean, we should go back a little bit. I could just say, I love the fact that we get to there. Obviously, Walter Donovan, which you should talk about at some point too.
We should talk about the villain of the film, Walter Donovan, played by Julian Glover.
Who, yes, speaking of Star Wars, Julian Glover of Star Wars fame there. A very small Star Wars fame, but he was a Maximilian Veers, General Maximilian Veers in The Empire Strikes Back, also known to Game of Thrones.
Do you know he was also in Doctor Who?
I did, of course I know.
I just need to make sure that you're,
he was in.
I didn't want to take away your.
Julian Glover was basically in every. He was also in James Bond movie. He was in pretty much every kind of franchise that I love at that point. He was involved in Harry Potter. He was the voice of Aragog in Harry Potter. Yeah. Like all sorts of things, like Game of Thrones. Like I said, he's in everything I've ever seen. Like, he's a phenomenal actor. One of those guys who doesn't get a lot of, or like he's not a big star. He doesn't get a lot of remembrance, but he's always very solid and adds so much to whatever he gets involved with. But yeah, I loved Walter Donovan the whole time through. I'm going to throw a little bit of an aside here. I can't lie. I was initially attracted to the guy because like his last name was Donovan, and I was a big V fan. So V, 1983, 1984, Mike Donovan was the hero. So I'm like, this guy's name is Donovan? What? Totally side. But I'll plug the review thing we're doing on PLD Projects, the V franchise we're going through. But anyway, What I love about Walter Donovan is the fact that he is like I said before, kind of reminds me of Bellick a little bit, but he's that kind of guy who just, there's something a little off about him, but you don't want to commit to him being the villain until he reveals himself. You know what I'm saying? Like you buy into his act a little bit. Like there's something. I don't know if he's gonna be a good guy, but at the end, he's just well played. What are your thoughts on Donovan?
I love Donovan as a character because it's very different than the Belloc situation in Raiders. When we meet them, they're equals. That Indy doesn't really want to get involved in the situation. He even tells him, he's like, look, if you're looking for the Holy Grail, I'm not the Jones that you want.
Yeah.
And Donovan goes, that's the problem, basically, is
we did try your father.
We tried your father, and now he's gone missing. So we need your help, and we want to find your father. But the reason I like Donovan is that he doesn't come off even fully as like he just seems like a dude who's trying to help Indy. Yeah. And he even says the line, don't trust anyone.
So good.
And what a great way to be like, you should have known from the beginning that you shouldn't trust me. I told you not to. Like, I showed you my hand.
Yep.
And yet, here we are. So it really works for me because as a character, I find that fascinating. And, here's another one where he's kind of in bed with the Nazis, but he's more in bed with the Nazis for his own personal gain this time. Right. He's not really trying to aid anyone. And I guess to a point, Belloc's not really either. But at the same time, Belloc is willing to help the Nazi party in a very different way, I feel like.
Right.
Walter's just in it for himself.
Yeah, he just wants the ground. Any way possible, wants the ground.
Yeah.
Same as Elsa, for that matter.
Yeah, I was going to say, and then there's Elsa, who, again, one of the nice reveals is because we were so used to the indie girls being just the indie girls, her being a turncoat, again, trust no one, was a really nice change of pace. I quite like Allison Duty in this movie, but I also don't think the character gets like a ton to do. So she's arguably the least memorable of the indie of like the three indie women that we've met.
I would say she is. She's also the most typical Bond girl. She's the most typically James Bond girl, which makes sense. Her turning is actually what makes her memorable. That's the only thing that makes it. If she hadn't turned, it probably would have been a different story. But her turn was one of my favorite moments in the film, and not because of her, actually, just because more of Ford and Connery. Connery away, like, don't trust her. And I go there, she's like, how'd you know? She talks in her sleep. A line which was improvised by Connery, by the way.
Oh,
they left it in because it made everybody laugh. I loved the whole sequence there about him, both having slept with her, because it just made so much a great running joke to the rest of the film.
I didn't trust her. Why should you? Why did you? There's a lot of great, just small characters in this movie. Like, Ernest Vogel, the Nazi colonel, he's really fun. Again, he's a little bit one-dimensional. Like, he doesn't get a ton to do, but I still like the character. Like, he's very fun. There's something about him that it just works still as a character to me.
Right.
This movie is at its best though when it's being this like buddy adventure film.
Yeah,
because it kind of feels partially like the old Bing Crosby, Bob Hope road movies. Because they made a series of those buddy comedy adventure films that they would make, where it was the two of them on like whatever adventure, and they're just in a weird place doing things together and being comedic. That's kind of what it feels like having Connery and Ford together.
Yeah, I agree. It's a very fun. I think this is why this is considered the fun movie. This is considered the most fun of the movies for that reason. Is because you kind of are there with that relationship, and that's what brings you along with it.
Yeah, they're trying to kill us. Yeah, it happens to me all the time. It's a new experience for me. It's just the way that they play off of each other.
The whole introduction of them together, when they first when he swings in, that whole sequence is top notch for the whole. Like, that whole 10 minutes is some of my favorite filmmaking of the entire
because
the Ming Vaz, The whole hits him in the
Yeah.
head. He's like, I would never forgive myself. Oh, it's a fake. It's
It
so
breaks the
good.
heart and the
The
head.
head.
The So him being captured by the Nazis and he's in that castle and Indy has to go in and rescue him. I love this sequence too because it kind of gives me the vibe of what some of the games go for from time to time, where
Mm,
it's the Indy going from like one room, swinging out on a ledge, and then like swinging back through and into another, trying to sneak around, being a little bit of a spy, which I
right.
thought was very cool. Honestly, I'm a little mad that we didn't get like a 60s era or 50s era spy film out of Indy.
Jones. Yeah. That
They
could have
really
been
should
really
have
cool.
at one time. Like that, there's a world where, again, had things been handled a little differently, that could have been a way to go with the character for a little bit. Like a Cold War spy thriller
Oh, yeah.
could have been very
Absolutely.
cool with Ford in the middle of it. Like, it's not like he would have been any stranger to that. That was very much what the Jack Ryan
Like
character
Ryan.
already was.
Exactly.
So, like, you could have done that. Um, in the same vein of like a legacy sequel to The Rocketeer now would primarily set it right in the middle. If you like did a real time jump, you would set it in like because it's 1939, came out in 91. Like you set it at the very end of the 60s, very similar
Yeah.
to the new indie. You could have a like Cold War Russia set Rocketeer sequel where you have Billy Campbell come back and Cliff is been recruited to be like a spy against
Yeah.
Russia. Like
100%.
there's a world where you can do that.
Absolutely.
The fact that
What would
they
you like?
haven't is
Mind blowing. Mind
baffling.
blowing.
Baffling. Anyway, I
Getting
digress.
back to Indy
Yeah.
and Sean and
Well, so this whole sequence from the moment that they find him to the reveal to them being tied in the chairs with the fire to the motorcycle
it's
escape is
best
excellent.
best buddy comedy I can ask for, really.
Yeah.
Best
And
buddy
again,
comedy you
this is
ask
like
for.
a 25-minute sequence.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like that at all. It feels like it goes by so quickly. Like one of my favorite moments of the whole thing. I got to throw it out there because I have to do my favorite line bit. Start back and forth. You find out that Indy is actually a junior. He's not Indiana Jones. He's a junior.
Oh, yeah.
Junior, don't call me Junior. I told you not to call me. Shoots the Nazis. Ooh, look what you did.
It's so good. And when Indy falls down the stairs because his dad finds the trap,
The chair.
the fake stairs or the secret stairs is one of my favorites. And the come on, Dad. He's getting all frustrated. Oh, dude. Their entire chemistry is so good. And honestly, you can tell that they really spent time together trying to make sure that the vibe was going to be right. It needed
Yeah,
to feel like they both you needed to feel that they had both been through some stuff together,
yeah.
that there was some tension, there needed to be a little bit of hostility, but there still needed to be love underneath. And that's not an easy balance. And
No,
yet the two of them do it well.
and also they had to do it in a way that didn't like overwhelm the audience because while the father son thing is probably the most important part of the film as far as its heart goes, if it becomes all about that, it kind of drags down the adventure side of things. It drags down the humor side of things, which needs to stay in focus. My favorite bit about that, and well, I'm jumping forward a little bit, but it makes a lot of sense to me, was when they're on the big air blimp. He sits down in this
Yeah, I was actually
conversation,
going to bring all this up.
and we have that moment together where they're like sitting there, and Harrison Ford's like, or Indy's like, we weren't there for me, yada yada. And finally, Sean Connery goes, "Well, I'm here. What do you want to talk about?" And Indy is speechless. He's like, nothing comes to mind. Well, what are you talking about then?
Yeah.
What are you worried? Why are you so complaining for? Let's go. It's like
It's
perfectly character.
it's so good because it's a real life thing, right?
Yeah,
In those moments where you've spent days, weeks, months, years in your head preparing for that one moment where you're going to finally confront a single person in your life about something, and then you finally do, and then you don't know how to reply once the conversation has started. We have all
right.
been there.
Absolutely. 100%. And it's like you feel for him in that situation, but then how Connery plays it off is just so perfect.
Well,
Yeah.
and
Oof.
again, it's their dynamic. It's why I love that scene on the Zeppelin so much,
Mhm.
because you really get a feel for how hard it was on Indy and how little at the same time he didn't necessarily understand his father.
Right.
And it's the same thing that I think a lot of us work through, where you think you see a side of things and you aren't really sure, and then you're trying to grapple with it many years later on how the situation played out. And you know, I've talked about it before. I've had my own issues with that from with my own father. So
Right.
like there's a very real situation and scenario for me in watching that. Like I feel very similar in that capacity. And there's that moment when he goes, I never understood this, and neither did mom. And you
Right.
see how angry Connery gets in that moment. And it was like, oh no, she understood, and only too well. Like you can see how much it pains him
Right.
to know that he ended up losing his wife. And it's like, I don't think Indy ever saw that.
No, of course he didn't. He was too young. That's part of the issue. Because obviously, by the time when we saw at the beginning, when River Phoenix was playing Indy at that point, you can tell that she's already gone at that point. That she's already
Yeah,
been gone for a while. They're alone together. But never did see that. And Sean Connery's father never wanted him to see that. He kind of probably protected him in a way from that to a
right.
degree. Unfortunately, it led to Indy assuming things that probably weren't necessarily true
And resenting him a bit.
and resenting him a bit for it. Absolutely.
Like, and
Um,
that's why it works, right?
mhm.
And again, that's why I actually appreciate this movie so much. It's why I appreciate so much of what it's doing, because that feels very real
Yeah.
in a
Mhm.
way that I don't think people take the time to appreciate that.
No.
When you look at this movie, you see the fun and the adventure and the excitement, but there's like the
Deep heart
father-son dynamic is the heart of this movie. The
by
rest of it
far.
is great and fun, but it's window dressing to like dealing with your own trauma.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that is what this movie is. It is about a kid who is dealing with his own trauma, who is trying to rectify this relationship with his father that has fallen apart. And now he's an older man and he realizes that he doesn't have his own family. He's out doing all of this, he's alone, and the only person left in his life other than Marcus is his father.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
you have to protect that.
100%. And that shows how wonderful a crafted storyteller Steven Spielberg is. He can do that
Yes.
and do that in such a great fashion, make it meaningful, make it powerful, make it touching, and yet wrap it up in this adventure, fun, comic buddy comedy kind of thing routine that it just works so well as a total package. That's the best part of Steven Spielberg, putting those real emotions in and wrapping it in this kind of like easily digestible bow, so to speak. What a fun just adventure movie in general what that is.
No, it is. But the bow on all of it is also that this whole heart of it is what leads to the end of the movie,
Right.
right?
The
Like
important part.
the important parts of this is that when Indy finally gets the Holy Grail, he doesn't use it for him. He
That's his
uses
father.
it to get the bullet out of his father so his father
Mhm.
can live.
You're right. Right.
Like,
And then it turns around. Let's be honest. I mean, we're
yeah,
jumping ahead to the end there. Of course, the end where the Grail is there, and Indiana Jones loses Elsa. Elsa is what a great series of events. Elsa, who has been a turncoat, even though she's not quite a Nazi, she's still in it for personal gain. She takes the Grail and tries to leave, despite what the knight has told her. This is a good spoiler. We're jumping all over the place here, but that's how we roll in here on Mediocre Wages on
well,
Film.
to be fair, we've also just kind of been talking about it in like broad strokes in a very
Yeah.
specific way.
Um,
So,
So she falls down. The chasm opens up. The Grail falls. She goes for it. Indiana Jones has her, and she's trying to reach the Grail, and she will not listen. Indiana's like, "Grab my hand, grab my hand. I can't hold you," and she won't, and she falls in the chasm because of it. But then Indy falls, and it's the same thing. It's back to back, but Indy can quite. I love the shot where like he touches the Grail with his fingers, like I can get it, and his father's like, no, just drop it, forget it. But then he has that moment, that great Spielbergian moment.
yep, Indiana.
Indiana.
Yep. When he finally says his name for the first time.
Right. Won't ever call him Indiana. I'll call him Junior the whole time, but knows his son, accepts who his son is, accepted his son wants to be Indiana. It kind of skirts this cloud. And then he says the line that you need him to hear, let it go.
And the big moment for that too is that that's also him letting it go.
Yes, and that's exactly what it is. Not about it. It's about him letting, because been his obsession for his entire life, for Indy's entire life, and he's able to. It's right there in his hands. Let it go, because
Oh,
his relationship with his son overall is more important to him.
yeah. It's
What a
really
beautiful
cool.
sentiment. Yeah.
No, it totally is. And again, I think that, you know, as fun as this movie is and as it thrilling as it is, we have to get back to the action set pieces. It was just so easy to talk about everything else. But
Yeah.
I think people just don't always pay attention to this. Like, it's clearly the movie, but I think people just see it in like the terms of that's the story. I don't think that they see it in the terms of what it's saying and what it's trying to do. And like, to me, I think that's why I love this movie so much and why I actually think Raiders is my second favorite movie of all time. It will likely always still be my favorite, but Last Crusade always edges up on it, and it's not because I think it's more fun than Raiders. I think it's because I just generally think that the heart of this film is so deeply satisfying and so deeply thought out, and so everything about it is baked into the film. Like, it's not like Raiders, right?
Right.
The stuff with Indy and Marion is not baked into what's happening in the story.
Right.
They just happen to have to be together because, he grew up around her, they fell in love, they had the falling out, but, like, the rest of it's not baked into the central core of it. Like,
Right.
this movie, it is.
So much so. I agree. Honestly speaking, I can say it now. I think honestly, I go back and forth all the time. And when I watch Raiders, I love Raiders is probably the better movie, probably the better crafted movie overall, probably the better movie. I think I do come down saying Last Crusade is my favorite Indiana Jones movie. I would watch it if I'm going to pick an Indiana Jones movie to watch. I'm going to put this one on, and it's because of that exactly the thing. It's that heart. It's the soul of it. It's the kind of perfected masterpiece at this point. Like Raiders of the Lost Ark was a good warming up for everything else, and then Indiana, like by the time we get to Last Crusade, you just know what they're doing. They're
Yeah.
experts at this point, and it works. Oh god, it's so good. It's such a
It's
great film.
so good, dude, and again, like
It's Connery's my favorite Connery role, to be honest with you. I don't whatever anybody says about Bond, Untouchables, anything he's done. Like I just watch. I always. I think I mentioned this before. I have the movie on the background when we talk a lot of times. I just kind
yeah.
of throw it up on the screen. I just had the moment. What a great line for me was when they get in their first meeting. He comes up to me and says, "I found it. I found it." And he says, he looks the same. He tells Sean Connery the name of the city, Alexandretta, and he just gets his moment of giddy schoolboy.
Alexandria.
Like,
Yeah, it's the
it's just
best.
great. Connery is magical in this.
And you can tell he's having fun, and the
Yes.
truth is, like, as much as I love Connery, I don't think that he made a lot of movies in his career that allowed him to be fun. He did a lot of
Right.
very more serious, dramatic work. The Bond movies allowed him to be fun, but, like, for the most part, he was always taking stuff that was more dramatic. It's actually why I like so much of his back half of his career. The
Yeah.
Rock is the same way. The Rock, he's having the time of his life. He's
100%.
great in that movie because
Oh,
he's
yeah.
doing something a little different, and it's kind of fun, and this movie allows him to have just fun, and you can tell he's enjoying himself, and
Mhm.
he's not being forced to be the centerpiece of the action sequences either, which is great for him, so he can actually enjoy himself on set.
Absolutely. And that's part of the big deal. He lets Harrison Ford do the action. He gets to sit back and just kind of react to it. And it
Yeah.
leads to those great moments together where he has these just
Yeah.
fun little magical fun moments.
Well, and there's the moment too, and to bring this full circle for the part you were talking about with the Grail, it's actually the reason that I like that on top of you couple that with he thinks he already lost Indy.
Yeah.
Because once the tank
Yes.
goes over the side of the mountain, he stands there thinking that he's finally gotten his son back just to lose it.
I only needed 5 minutes. I said to
Yeah.
say something. Yeah, I said so much I had to talk to him about her. 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's funny. We mentioned that during Temple of Doom. How it's the warm
Yeah.
up because we had the crawling up the bridge kind of thing. This is the same
Yeah.
type of thinking, but this is done much better, to be honest with you.
Well, because this one feels very emotionally
Yeah, charged.
satisfying, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like,
And can I say, I'm going to throw it out there. Sometimes stuff that happens, you're like, that's unbelievable. It's stupid and it makes no sense. And like, it's But sometimes it's okay to put that on screen because it's a wink and nod to the audience, and you know it's stupid, but you laugh at it and it goes on. And that moment happens at the end when like they walk away, Indy kind of collapses, and all of a sudden, I don't know where the hat comes rolling by in the wind.
Yeah.
And it's like there, it's like, really? But at the same time, you're like, yes,
Yeah,
yes, really.
I love that moment. Because again, it's a movie. Like there should be a little bit of whimsy to it all. I
Right,
think people
exactly.
take that stuff so seriously, and it's like, no, that's a good moment, man.
It's a great moment. It's a fun moment. And the music plays like that. And you're like, yeah, I like where
Yeah,
I
yeah. That
am.
whole tank sequence, man. I was talking about it earlier, and that sequence is so thrilling. We don't get enough Indy on horse action,
Yeah.
and so to have him riding on a horse with the gun, like what a great that one iconic shot that people show it all the time. It's the shot of him on that stallion with the revolver pointed
Yep.
out. Like what a great shot in a sequence of really great shots. Once he's up on the tank and they're all fighting and he falls off and he's being pushed into the mountain wall, dude. Like, are you kidding me?
So good.
It's
So
so
good.
good. Using the rock to make the gun backfire, killing the gun operator is fantastic. Like this scene is so fun.
Yeah, the whole thing is just so fun. The whole action sequence, right from the beginning, like the belly of the beast, and you see the tank crushing the cars, and you see the fun they're having inside the tank with the other officers. But yeah, for the moment that he's fighting with the what's it got Vogel,
Vogel.
there, and then he grabs the father of the whip. The father is like sliding along the treads, and you're like, oh my god, what's gonna happen with this?
Which I love, by the way. That sequence is fantastic.
Yes. The bunch I mentioned before when Salah comes by, his father asked about him, his father, for getting for saving the day. That whole tank sequence is fun. There's a lot of fun moments in this film. That's
Well,
part of it.
because the whole movie is fun. That's
gonna
the
say
thing.
one thing we haven't talked about. Yeah, we mentioned. I think we mentioned it off air. In the library sequence when he
Dude.
discovers he discovered
Well,
he's
because
looking at the he's
the
looking at
X
the
never
different
marks no X never ever marks the
marks
spot.
spot. He finds different Roman numerals and he goes, wow, X marks the spot. He finds it. But at least one of my favorite jokes, and we mentioned it too, you mentioned it too. Favorite jokes of like the 80s and 90s, even film wise, the stamping moment is just so well played and so ridiculous, but such for a great movie moment. When Indy starts stamping, trying to break through the concrete floor to get to the tomb underneath. And all we do, they don't show him stamping the floor. They flash back to this librarian who's stamping books, and they do it exactly in time. Boom!
Yeah.
Starts
When
looking at
he
his
finally
stamp.
puts the stamp down and he just stares at it and like his eyebrows go up, I die every single time.
That's the kind of actor I love in movies. Like I don't even know what his name was, but you put it in a movie, he does it things like that properly. It just adds so much texture to a movie and so much heart
Mhm.
to a movie. You're talking about a little sequence which takes place maybe less than a minute. Here it is. How many years later? 40 years later, and here it is. We're still talking about that moment in the movie. What a great legacy.
X marks the spot.
Xbox spot, man.
This movie and the entire Venice sequence honestly is so cool. And I was thinking about this a little bit. I think this one is the closest to the James Bond movies too, in some capacity, because it feels like it's the one that gets to the most interesting locales throughout, like
Yeah.
opening in Utah, then move, wherever the tanker is. I think is it off the coast of Spain or something at the beginning of the movie, and then
Yeah.
to end up back in America, to end up in Venice,
In
to end up
Venice.
in
Scotland.
Scotland. Yeah,
Austrian
this
border.
movie does a lot of the like world traveling that I think that the Bond movies are so well known for.
Right.
And I think that's really cool. And
Yeah.
like the Venice sequences are great because we don't get a lot of sequences like that in the Indiana Jones movies in like crowded areas of
Right.
public like that. It looks like Dial of Destiny is going to have some, which I'm very interested and excited about. And there's a little bit at the beginning of Temple of Doom, but for the most part, when the action sequences are happening, they're contained to like the temple or the place that they're at, and it's not like a crowded marketplace.
Right. Exactly.
Other than the chase sequence, obviously through a crowded marketplace in Raiders, but it's not like the boat sequence. You know what
Right.
I'm saying? Where you're using vehicles and stuff.
Right. Absolutely.
So it's kind of
Um,
fun that you get that out of it too. And that boat sequence is fantastic.
oh God, yeah. Let's talk about sequel. Let's talk about we haven't talked about it at all. Kazim and the Brotherhood of the Cruciform Sword, which, by the way, is not the only thing the Mummy really stole from Indiana or paid
From this
homage
movie.
to the
Yeah.
Indiana Jones. Basically, the Mummy is born out of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Oded Fehr's character is basically Kazim done a little bit more spectacularly, I guess you could say, more
Did you
dramatically.
see that Kavork recently got the action figure they released of the Grail Knight and he posted it on Twitter?
Oh, I did not. I did not see
Or
that.
the leader of the Brotherhood of the Cruciform
Oh,
Sword.
good.
Yeah, I'll
Of
see.
Kazim.
Yeah,
Oh,
I'll see if I'll
wow.
find it. I'll send it to you. But
Yeah.
it was in like the last couple of weeks. They released a action figure of him, and there was a picture of him with it, and he was all excited because I don't know if they had done that before, and so he finally got an action figure of himself.
Wow, that's awesome. That's really cool.
Yeah, I thought that was so neat. I was like, that's so good.
What a great character. Like, again, talking about not getting a lot of time to play with, but like making a mark. I mean, one of his lines is one of my favorites in the whole thing when the whole boat sequence happens. At the very end, they're about to die, and or Harrison Ford's about to like try to punch the information out of him, and like, we're gonna die, and he just has this great moment. My soul's prepared. How is yours?
That's
And it's like,
yours.
oh, it's so good. You're like, this guy's a badass right here.
I
Speaking of
love
him,
that.
go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say I love that moment, and I love their chemistry. And like once they finally drop him off, and it was like him realizing that Indy's not in it for personal gain; he's in it
Right.
for finding his father.
Yeah, good luck.
And he go, yeah, well,
Walks
good
away
luck.
like nothing happened.
Yeah,
It's like, okay.
yeah. Oh, it's so funny.
Another one of my favorite lines, getting away from Kazim for a second, is during that whole boat sequence. I love the fact when Allison Duty is driving the boat and he's punching somewhere. They see the two big boats coming. He's like, "Don't go between them." And you turn around, "Go between
Go
them? Are you
between
crazy?"
them. Are you crazy?
I said,
I said go around.
no,
You said go between them.
I said, "Don't go between." It's such a
Oh,
great- what a work of dialogue and how unbelievable, exciting, funny that. Oh, it's so good.
and that gives me a little Willie Scott
Yes.
indie vibes from Temple of Doom, also with the banter.
Yeah, there is a lot of Willie Scott in Elsa. Like Elsa, I feel is like I don't want to say smart version of Willie, but the more not so it's the more clever version of Willie the how do you, I don't know how to necessarily say it, but
Yeah.
very similar vibes overall. Except for she knows what she's doing more. I mean, the whole love sequence that they have is very reminiscent of Temple of Doom in terms of the playfulness of them. The whole "How dare you kiss me?" And then she kisses him back, kind of thing. It's a whole like love fight thing, which of course leads to the best of the Venice.
Yeah. Yeah. Venice. I just think that this whole sequence, when they get underground and Dad would never have gotten this far. He hates rats was such a great addition too, because there's a little bit of Indy getting excitement that he's also finishing something his father apparently never could have,
Right,
which I find really interesting. Because when Connery signed on to the movie, his whole thing was that anything that Indy has done, his father's already done it.
right, exactly. And it's the connected moment. It's like Indy has snakes, he has rats.
Yeah. And then they even talk about that. Dad, there were rats. Rats? And he gets all
Rats.
nervous. And
Yeah, the rats.
yeah.
Mm.
Dude, also, I gotta say, we haven't talked about this too much, but the sequence when they end up having to go to the Nazi rally to save the Holy Grail
Oh
from being
yeah,
burned, what a greatly shot, greatly tense, weirdly comedic, but also like just harrowing 3 or 4 minutes of movie.
yeah. Oh yeah, power from every angle. You find Indy in the Nazi uniform, running up, grabbing Elsa, and it's a great moment for
Gives
Elsa
a
too.
damn what you think.
That was a great moment. That
Oh,
was a great dramatic one. And he doesn't get a whole lot of dramatic moments like that. That was a
yeah.
very like strong as fuck moment. He's like, yeah, like, damn. What do you think?
It's the way that Ford just delivers that line, man. Like,
He, there are a few actors that can deliver lines like he does in that fashion. When he chooses to turn it on, it's like you were to listen to him, no matter what
yeah.
he's saying. But I like it Elsa too, though, because I like Elsa because it shows her as a not a Nazi. You get to see her reaction to them burning the books, and she's like heartbroken about it. She doesn't like it at all. She's not really a Nazi, even though she's but she chose the wrong path regardless. But then, of course, it leads to the humorous moment, which is like that weird. It's always weird to kind of joke about Hitler because it's
Yeah.
always kind of like that, like should we, could we, can we?
Yeah, should we be doing this right
I
now?
don't know. But I think they handle it quite well. Harrison Ford runs into him with the book, and he kind of stands up straight, not like to salute. He won't salute him, but he's like, "This is our moment." Is he going to literally punch out the King Nazi here?
Well, and not just that, because they know that, like, just before that, there's that whole line from Walter: Germany's declared wars on the Jones boys.
Yep.
So you have to think that Hitler will have an idea of what India at least looks like.
Maybe.
You know what I
They kind
mean?
of get the feel. I kind of got the feel like that it might not have gone up that high on the food chain yet, as far as that. Like it'd been.
Yeah, but it wouldn't be the first time that Indy got in the middle of all this.
That's true. That's true.
Because of the Ark of the Covenant.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. But
so
but also back in the day, they didn't have like the camera shots and everything else. The surveillance.
No, for sure. But I mean, I do think about that though. Like,
yeah,
you know what I mean? That's part of what makes that scene so tense to me is that they're aware of the situation.
Well, then that's the funniest thing because he's got the book. He's trying to take like the book that the Nazis want, and it's delivered right into Adolf Hitler's hands, and then he signs it and gives it back.
Yeah.
And the smirk on Harrison Ford's face. It's not quite a smirk, but it's like the beginning of that smirk. He's like, he realizes what's going on. He's like, I just can't believe we're getting away with this. So good. So good.
Oh, man. It was just so... the whole thing is really excellent. And that really just works in so many ways, right? It also just shows the utter fucking ridiculousness of that entire party in one moment where they're so busy chasing a thing that they don't even stop to see that the thing is right in front of them the entire time. They're foolish. They're foolish. And I love that it does that. I think it's such a great moment. That's part of why I like it so much is it feels like it's just kind of fucking
damning them.
Yeah, like you had your chance. It was right there. You had the book, you had the Joneses, you had it all.
And they had the second chance in the Zeppelin as well. And then they blew that too, of course. Exactly. The famous sequence that is also made famous by Kevin Smith later in Dogma. No ticket. Oh God, everybody else starts throwing their ticket up in the air.
This movie is just so full of life and got so many great jokes and so many great action sequences. Like, after the Zeppelin sequence, you get the plane sequence, which is great.
I'm about to bring it up to one of my favorite joke moments and like action sequences there when Sean Connery starts like firing the guns. And he's like, 11 o'clock. He's like, no, it's only a quarter. What's happening at 11 o'clock? He's like, no, 11, 10, 9, 8. And he shoots it and shoots the back. And he goes, I'm sorry, son.
They got us. That whole sequence is beyond brilliant, but then them getting out of the car leading to like the plane chasing them and then the plane ending up getting into the tunnel, like sliding past them before it explodes. There's so many great little beats like that just work. The jousting sequence with the motorcycle is fantastic. Like, this movie is so fucking great. And it, like, if it was the end of the trilogy, like if it was the end of the series and it was just a trilogy capper and this was it and we never got any more, I'd be totally satisfied because at the end of the movie, they ride off into the sunset.
Literally right off into the sunset. Obviously done purposely for that exact reason, but it was a perfect ending to the series too. I'm happy with Crystal Skull coming, and I'm happy we're getting Dial of Destiny. But I agree, if it had ended there, it would have been a perfect send off.
Oh, totally. Now, one thing I do want to mention because we really haven't talked about it a ton is the last part of the third act. One of the things I like about it a lot is that unlike the other Indiana Jones movies where they're very actiony. In their third act, like up until the last frame, even Raiders to a point is very actiony until it's not. But this one pulls from the Raiders thing a little bit. It really slows down in the last 20 minutes to be like methodically character driven.
To let it breathe. It lets it
let it breathe, but it does it better than Raiders.
For the first time, Indy's going after that final that the MacGuffin or whatever it is for a personal reason. Like
Hmm.
Raiders of the Lost Ark, it's like his job, kind of, and a kind of fortune glory for the Temple of Doom. It's about the kids and like the stones for the villagers, and also in this one, he's doing it to save his father's life. And so when he goes and starts to slow down, and more of the booby trap kind of thing, which is kind of cool, but him being the smart, trying to figure it all out, the, watching as Indy and his father are saying the clues together, penitent man, on the penitent man, I'll pass, penitent man, penitent, kneel. He does that. He gets through it. It's like, oh, that's great. That's great. Um, One interesting thing, I gotta tell you, there's a lot of like little moments and kind of like, oh, why didn't this happen? And I just don't worry about it. I move forward past it, but I can't help but thinking it. Like for example, when he steps on the J instead of the I for the next sequence where he's supposed to spell the name of God in Hebrew, I think it is, or whatever. But he mistakenly goes ahead and starts calling him Jove, and he steps through and he follows through. Now he grabs onto the side there, right?
Yeah,
Aren't that also like other wrong letters? So technically, it should have been as easy to break through as the rest. Technically speaking,
probably, but
you can live with it. You go through.
I just love this whole sequence because there's a flair of horror. This movie doesn't have much, whereas like we talked about a lot, Temple of Doom is
The horror
almost
movie.
strictly a
Yeah.
horror film. This one is definitely not. Like it's a high adventure film,
Right.
but at the same time, there's so many little beats that I really love that feel horror-esque in this,
Yeah.
and this is one of them, but it's the one with the blades.
Right.
That one's really great. And then of course, everything with the knight, because once you start drinking from the grail, the villain has to die, terribly.
Right.
They always
Yeah.
have to.
Before we get there, though, I gotta say one of my favorite, the leap of faith moment was actually really
So great.
cool. 'Cause it meant so much to the character, but also like visually, I loved how they did that. Because you got to see it. Like I don't see it either, but then they do the nice little twist and turn, and just a little bit of the camera to show you how, oh, it's actually a bridge, so you get to see it through Indy's eyes, what he was seeing, versus what was actually there. I just
Dude,
love that moment.
it's such a good moment, and the music, everything about it is so perfect.
Mm,
It's just a great moment, and
yeah.
I love it dearly. Like, again, and to see him take that leap of faith, right?
Yep. Yeah.
And that look when he drops and he lands on it, and that, like, look on his face when he realizes that he's standing on something
Yes.
is so good.
Yes. Oh wow. So we have the knight at the end there. Robert Edison plays, I believe, and it's wonderful to watch this whole thing go down. Obviously, quickly enough, Elsa and Donovan are behind them, and Donovan just wants the cup. And it's funny that he's worked so long and so hard to get here that he gets here and he's so impatient about it. He's like, I don't know what to do. Realizing that you just went through 3 booby traps. You know that if you choose wrong, this is going to completely you're done. You're going to die. And he goes like, I don't know what to pick, and just lets Elsa pick it quickly. He's like, yeah, how about this one?
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you a question. I've had this conversation with people before. Does Elsa choose wrong on purpose?
I kind of think so, to be
I
honest.
kind of feel that way too. I kind of feel that way because she does it really kind of quickly, and this is like, here, yeah, take this one, just to see what would happen in a way. Because I think that she does have. I like the fact that her character has a lot of layers to her, in that she is evil to a point. I mean, she chose the wrong side, but I think she has some regrets about choosing the wrong side. She's still not a good person. She's still a selfish person at heart, but she's not evil. And I think in her heart, at the end there, if she could have her way, she would actually happily share this with Indy and have her and Indy go off in the sunset together with the Grail kind of thing. Now
Yeah.
they got to get the Grail. That's just as important to her. But like I like the layers it adds, and so to me, I love the fact that she does potentially give him the wrong cup on purpose.
Yeah.
Then I love how Indy has the great moments there. He just scans it really quickly and grabs the most common cup, and it's like that. Of course, that's what it is. Of
The cup
course,
of a
it's
carpenter.
the cup of a carpenter. Absolutely,
Yeah.
it's a great moment.
It's the best moment, and that's why I like it so much, because it proves that Indy is the intellectual that you always assumed he is, right?
Right.
Like, that's what's so great about it.
It is. It is. Wow. Yeah. By the way, do you know who is actually originally going to be considered to play the night?
Yeah, wasn't it Laurence Olivier?
It was Sir Laurence Olivier. It was supposed to be the one. Unfortunately, he was too ill at the time. Didn't make it too much
That
longer.
would have been real good, actually. I could see that.
Oh, 100%, 100%. Not that Robert Edison did fine. He was actually really, really good with good in the role. Yeah. So, wow, what a fucking movie. Is there anything we didn't talk about?
Honestly,
We should
no.
bring up. I feel like we went so scattered, like we usually do. I always feel like we missed something because we go so scattered. It's like, is there anything we know? We got the.
No, but the thing is the way we do it is you're covering everything in pieces in different ways, and I think that's why I like what we do, because we find ways to,
Yeah, looking over else. Yeah, Indy's horrible Scottish accent. Okay, and
yeah, I mean, there's plenty. I mean, if we want to break down every joke and every nook and cranny, sure. But I mean,
could, yeah. But I'm looking at my notes. I'm like,
yeah, we hit every major thing that you talk about when it comes to this movie, and we also, I really like to think that we made the point that people miss that this movie is a lot more like methodically put together as not just an adventure film, but it is a movie about like forgiveness and trauma, and I think that's a big deal.
It's father, son, it's family. It's about family. It's the relationships that we have, and that's what that's what it's all about. It's about trust. Trust is a big one in this. Who can you trust? Who can you not trust? About family, about living your life, and it's also about. And honestly, one of the big moments that we mentioned it, but I want to hammer home about it a little bit. It's about letting go. You have to be able to let go. Like Indy's father did at the very end. Even if it's something so important to you, sometimes there are things that are more important, and you got to let go of that thing.
Agreed.
So, all righty, we did it. What a great episode this was. A lot of fun. This was. I had a lot of fun talking about this with you. And then next week, of course, is our time to shine.
Indiana Jones, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
I feel we're locking and loading, getting our armory set up. We're going to be digging in deep. And we'll talk about how what we love about that particular entry into the Indiana Jones franchise. But until then, where can the folks find you?
You did the thing again.
I always do the thing.
I know.
Always
I was waiting to see if you wait. I was waiting to see if you figured out that you had skipped it again.
All right, let's rate it. Let's rate it. All right, a scale of 1 to 11, because we always rate things up to 11. We turn things up to 11 here on PLD Projects. We both rated Raiders of the Lost Ark a perfect 11. We both rated Temple of Doom a 10.5 out of 11. What do you rate Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, my friend?
This is all unfair because I gotta give it an 11. I think it matches it, man. Like it matches Raiders. It's deeply doing its own thing that I find so fascinating. Like I said, I relate to a lot of the like core aspects of the film in a very specific way. I think what it's trying to do is really remarkable in the middle of a big adventure film. And that I think that's why I continue to go back to it and continue and enjoy it as much as I do. So yeah, that's it.
I pretty much already spoiled it. It's my favorite. This is absolutely an 11 for me as well. Perfect 11. I think it might be my favorite. I'll go back and forth. Basically, every time I watch Raiders, it's Raiders. Every time I watch Last Crusade, it's Last Crusade. So they're both really neck and neck, and neither one could be on top. And I really wouldn't argue it. But this is a perfect film for so many different ways. One of the most perfect adventure films I've ever seen. One of the most perfect father-son movies I've ever seen. Great score, great action, great humor, great heart, great adventure, great direction, great story, everything about it. It's just spot on. Yeah, it's one reason it's such a great franchise. It really hits it home. So that's what we got there. Okay, now where can the folks find you? I didn't hear anything else, did I?
No, you guys can find me on Twitter and Instagram at PJ_Campbell. You can also find us over at Reels Like the First Time. We just did an episode about Police Story. I believe it dropped last week with Alice Salamone. Definitely give it a check if you haven't. Like, honestly, if you like what we do here, you're gonna like that because it's just us doing this. We did it. We hijacked that show bad.
I almost felt bad. I
almost felt bad, but Allison knew what she was getting into when she invited both of us together.
She has both on for that reason. So
yeah, I had a really good time though talking about that because the Jackie Chan movies are movies that I grew up on, and it was really fun to just sit and talk about that and kind of wax poetic again, if you will, about the movie, and we had a really nice time.
Yeah.
So please go check it out. That is over on what is that channel? I forget. Sorry, guys, not to be that guy. Flick and Reel.
Real. Fucking real. That's what it was. Yeah.
Thank you. I don't mean to be that person. That comes off so negatively, and I don't mean it to. I'm not really in the YouTube space as much as I used to be. So the names escape me.
Apologies. I'm just getting old. And I forget things.
Yeah. I know.
No, that's awesome. I agree. I think you definitely should check that out. I had a lot of fun on that as well, and we had so much fun that we kind of broached the subject already of coming back for another Jackie Chan film potentially for that, because that's how much fun we had. Hopefully that'll continue.
It seems like we may end up doing a few of those over there, which will be very interesting. Like, it was never I don't know if it was ever really intentional for that, but
I don't think it was, but
here we are.
That's then you can find me at Paul_Denuzzi on Twitter. You can find me all over PLD projects. I'm recording today's episode right after this. I'm going to record Mission Impossible Declassified. Maddie Gunner and patron Matthew Kearns and myself are talking about Mission Impossible 3, which should air on Saturday. Holy Snokes, I do with Maddie Gunner, episode on every week. We do an episode on Star Wars podcast. And what else? We do Crown Jewels. A lot of different things we're doing on PLD projects. And if you like the channel,
if you haven't, make sure you also watch our update video about the state of class action.
Yes, that's something you should definitely check out. Richard R. Jarvis, we wish you well, my friend, and wait to your return, because we love you like a brother. You are a brother to us, so we appreciate you. And definitely update that video. It's right on the homepage there. And if you do want to support the channel, first time here, click that like, click subscribe. We're up to about 416 subscribers now. We're making that march towards 500. Modest goal, but we're going to take it as we can get it. And if you want to support even further, patreon.com/PLD projects. Austin Cadell, Jeremiah Morris, Matthew Kearns, Brandon Buckingham, Jeff Alterman, Kelly W. Couldn't do it without you guys, and the rest of you as well. We really appreciate you. Help keep the lights on here at the channel. And I love doing this stuff with you, and I'm very happy to be able to do this. Me too. Keep this up with you. And next week, like we said, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, here we come, and be ready for it. But that's next time. We will see you next time. Until next time, never underestimate the power of mediocrity. Bye now.